On today's episode of the Rainmaker Family Show, we interviewed Tracey Matney, who is a seven-figure business owner. She's also a wife, a mama, a homeschool mom, and she does that all only working 5 to 10 hours in her business doing a high-level CEO task per week. I really wanted to interview Tracey because I feel like she and her story, it's so relatable. Sometimes as moms, it can be hard releasing control of parts of your business and even parts of your household where you could be freed up to do what you are truly best at. And I love the conversation with Tracey because we actually talk about how making your first outsource hire or hiring someone to help you in your home is actually closer and easier than you think. And today she breaks it all down about how she was able to do that and scale her team without scaling herself. We talked all about outsourcing parts of your household so that you can be freed up to spend more time with your kids and more time in your business, working on the things that only you are good at. Tracey said she hasn't cleaned a toilet or folded laundry in over 3 years. And so I want you to listen in on how she has been able to do that and make it even more affordable than you actually might think. I am so excited, Tracey, to have you on sharing, just because over the last couple of years of getting to know you, kind of like crossing paths at different conferences and things, I feel like you have so much wisdom. And we recently were at the same conference together, and you were we were both just talking about like motherhood and running a business and asking for help and scaling. And I remember that conversation so well, and you really gave me permission. And I feel like different people at different places of our journey, as we continue to level up and hire team members, you are just one of those people that like continues to I feel like give me permission to like ask for help. And that as mamas, sometimes we feel like we have to do everything ourselves when it comes to like household work and schooling and running the business and DIYing ourselves to death and essentially. But there can totally be a different way. So I'm so excited, Tracey, for you to share on that today. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. Yeah, it's been fun, like just bumping into you at different conferences and chatting in Messenger from time to time. But I remember that conversation really vividly. And as much as I was encouraging you, I was also reminding myself because I was there and we were in Florida for like 10 days and we decided to bring our son with us to that conference. And my husband came and we both have our own businesses and then we run one together. And it can get really overwhelming and busy and you feel like guilty. I'm sure like mom guilt is a real common thing with probably most moms, I'd say, if not all. Like every mom I've talked to has felt that sometime. And even being there at the conference, and he was very well taken care of by a friend that I hired to come and hang out with him so we could still see him in the evenings. Even I was feeling like, okay, I hope he's having fun. Like, I hope he's not mad at me. You know, like we get that like worry that, the kids are going to be okay. And so as much as I was encouraging you, I was also like reminding myself not to feel guilty and that I am more than a mom. Like, I think sometimes we have this identity and our identity is whatever it is. It's like when I first started my business, my son was brand new. Like he was a newborn baby. And I was like nursing him and working at the same time. And I was like working for a company and I was getting paid hourly and it was a great company. I had a great boss and I was able to work from home, which is rare, I think. And that was like 2016 when he was born. And I remember being like, this is not going to work once he's walking. Like I already knew, like once he was like toddling around, like this isn't going to work. And so I started, my business and it just got harder because he was busy. And I was like, okay, well, I have to put him in daycare because there's no way that I can there's no way I can work and do a business. And it was just too much. And so I started hiring help, like with 11 and 12-year-old little mother's helpers. And that was that was 6 years ago now because my son's 6.
Talk about that mother's helper thing because you used that language before. And, I've heard of nannies, I've heard of house managers. Well, how would you define a mother's helper?
Well, let's talk about nanny first. So a nanny is like a job, like a official position. It's someone who's usually professional. They're an adult. They have experience. A mother's helper is like, it's kind of like home ec for like a 12-year-old homeschool girl. If a girl, and it doesn't be a girl, I guess it could be a boy, but at my church, there's a lot of homeschooler families, which I never thought I would homeschool. My mom's a kindergarten teacher, and she I loved my public school experience. I grew up in Texas and I never thought I'd homeschool, but like getting to like get to know some of these homeschooling families really inspired me and encouraged me. I was like, I can do that. So maybe we'll get to that in a minute. But these kids, it's like, it's a break for their mom because like they're in that tween awkward stage where they're independent and they want to do their own thing, but they also aren't old enough to go get a real job. Like you have to be 16 and drive a car. So they would just come over and I pay $5 an hour and they were like thrilled to make $5 an hour. You know, they can't get a real babysitting job. So they would just come and hold the baby or play with my son when he was like 2. And they would also, give them a whole list of things to do. Yeah. And it wasn't just like babysitting. It was like laundry and dishes and we do cloth diapers. So it was like folding the cloth diapers. And, you know, I got like addicted to hiring help. That like really got me addicted to that.
So was that your first, like dip your toe into it was the mother's helper thing? Okay, cool.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, and they would just come like, I had 3 of them and some would come like 2 days a week for 2 hours each, you know? So it was like 4 hours a week. So it's not a lot, but it was like a benefit to them. They got to learn a little bit about household management and babies. And like, it was good they got to make some money and it was good for their mom because they got to get their kid out of the house. And so, like I said, I got addicted to hiring help. And, I realized that like in my business, I have people that I pay anywhere from $25 to $50 an hour. So if I wanted to, I could keep doing all those household tasks myself. And then I'd hire someone to take, cause I can't do everything, right? I'd hire someone to do copywriting and graphic design and things like that. Or I could hire someone to do household tasks at $15 to $20 an hour, which is what I pay now. Cause I usually work with like high school or college students. And then I could do those higher level tasks myself. So it's actually makes more sense. And I can focus on the strategic things, the higher level skills in my business and outsource the, easier house tasks. So I haven't folded like a load of laundry in like 2 years.
That's amazing.
I like brag about that. I used to feel really guilty about it. And now I'm like bragging about it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that mindset shift. I feel like that term mother's helper, and honestly, that conversation that we talked about early on in this podcast, I had never heard of a mother's helper. I just heard of like babysitter and nanny. So that term was totally new to me. But I feel like maybe there are people listening and mamas listening that term is like totally new to them. And you just made like hiring help totally possible. Yeah. And because I feel like moms think of like a babysitter or like a nanny, and those oftentimes like can be like a higher paying thing. Right. And I feel like there are a lot of moms who, you know, we've got moms all different stages of life and income streams and are just starting out. And I just feel like you made it possible. Like, oh, think of the junior high girl, the freshman, the sophomore in high school who like would be stoked. You know, I think in California, I don't know what minimum wage is right now in California.
It's 15.
15. Yeah. So you could pay them like $10 an hour or even minimum wage, whatever you want to do.
Depends on the age,
Depending on the age, you know.
But even like $15 an hour is like not doable when you're first starting a business sometimes. If that's 10 hours a week, you know, that's $150 a week. That's $600 a month. That's kind of a lot when you're first starting. So I think, for me, it's like, that's an easy amount of money that I pay now because I'm like, I know how much more powerful I am in my business. And I can like easily turn the time that I'm working rather than spending an hour folding laundry or doing dishes or meal prep. I'd rather spend that hour doing something that's making way more than that $15 I'm paying somebody, you know?
Yeah.
Like when you're first starting your business and you're new, I mean, $5, $7 an hour is like actually a lot of money to somebody who isn't even allowed to legally have a job yet. You know?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's like the easiest job ever.
Yeah. It's kind of finding that in between where it's like, it's a win for them. It's a win for you. I love that. And I think you're totally right, Chelsea, that's going to be a breakthrough for people because we've been preaching outsource, buy back your time. We even have a whole episode on outsourcing our laundry, which we totally like. If you go back in the archives of the podcast, we wrestled with it. That one. On the podcast, we were like, is this weird? I don't know. Like, and then it's the same thing. It's like sometimes like for a long time we didn't tell people, and now we totally are like, everyone should do this. It's amazing. But it took time and like it took looking at the numbers and like, does this make sense? But I love how you framed it up as like when you compare it to how much you could be making in the business, like it totally makes sense to trade that for this, right? So I love that.
When I love like thinking about what is a really important task that I should be doing as the CEO. I have 7 team members now and a few other contractors. And if I'm sitting there doing, creating a logo or something, like that's not the best use of my time. I'd rather spend time with my son, homeschooling him, pouring into him as like the next generation, and just really encouraging his faith and all that stuff. Like you can't even put a dollar amount on that,
Yeah.
And if I'm sitting there in front of Canva for 3 hours, that's dumb. Like I should just have my designer that's what she loves to do. And I send it to her, and 2 days later it's totally done. And so it's not just the household task. It's also just the little small tasks that we feel like we're really busy. We feel like we're making progress in the business because we're redesigning the website or, creating some kind of graphic. And it's like, that's not a money-making task. So I only do money-making tasks now in the business.
Yeah. That's awesome. When you are in the middle of like a big business launch, or like life feels a little bit like there's more things that are on your plate, they're requiring your time as a CEO, or maybe your son is involved in more things. I loved how you said you run a business, but like are also able to keep like your sanity. So what are some things that you like have in place, whether they're like rules? I don't like the word rules, but just like strategy that you use as a CEO in your business, but in your family life, so that there isn't this like weird gray area mixed where you're like, in your business, but you're feeling guilty that you're not with your son, and then you're with your son and you're like on your phone trying to like that. It's never perfect. It's never so perfect. Hard. But like, what are you doing right now? Or what are some things that have worked for you in the past?
The phone thing, I think all of us have this problem. I think that the biggest like game changer for me, and my coach has really challenged me a lot on this, is to park my phone at night. So I park my phone downstairs in the kitchen at 9 p.m. and I'm not religiously consistent with it. I would love to be even more consistent with that. But when I do park my phone at 9, and I put my son to bed right before that, we're kind of a later family. We like don't get up that early. We're not those 4 a.m. We're at the gym.
We're not either.
Not at all. Good. Also removing the guilt from that. Like, let's just let that go. But like at 9 p.m. I park my phone, and then I try to be asleep by 10, because I know that if I lay in my bed on my phone, even for 5 minutes, it turns into an hour, and then it's just wasted time. And then the worst part is actually not the evening. It's actually the first thing in the morning. That's what I'm doing. Is if my phone's right next to me, the first thing I do is check all of my notifications from my team, text messages, emails from clients. Like, that's not how I should be starting my day. So a big thing for me to separate that is just to leave my phone elsewhere, because if I wake up in the morning and it's not right next to me, then I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I'm either going to get up, or I'll grab the Bible, which is sitting there, or a book, or my son will come and crawl in bed with us, and like, actually I can give him my attention rather than, him coming in bed. I'm like, hold on, let me respond to this. And we've had so many like just irritable mornings because I was on my phone during that morning time. And so I think the morning obviously like sets the sets the stage for the day. So I think the morning makes the most difference. And then I've had to realize that it actually starts the night before by parking. If you do nothing else, just change that one thing. Don't let it
park your phone.
Park your phone.
Not even just in the bedroom across the room, because that wasn't enough. Because I'd still just get up and go get. It's got to be all the way downstairs.
I love that. I have not parked the phone out of our room yet, and I feel like I'm using the excuse because we have baby monitors. Like, you
do when you're really tired, you'll just leave your phone downstairs, and you're like, I'm going to bed, and then I come up and plug it in.
But I will say that, Stephen, I had a moment a couple months ago actually where I just came downstairs, and I was just like, I was so frazzled. I was so frustrated. I was like all the emotions that I didn't even know how to express, and I felt like everybody and everything was like screaming at me, like wanting my attention, like whether it was a friend conversation that I care about, or it was like a business thing between like email and Instagram and all these things. And I had all these messages that I hadn't responded to, plus getting stuck in the scroll. And I was just like, Stephen, help me. So Stephen has like set up, like, at least for me, this is what's working now, like a password on my phone that goes, like, it basically shuts down all of my apps, everything, even text messages, all of that at a certain time.
Nice.
I don't know what time it is. And
it's just like the screen time.
Yeah.
And what is the other? quiet mode or
Nothing
something.
like super fancy.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
is like changed everything.
But she doesn't know the password. So then it like, she can't just, because I did screen time for myself and then I knew the password. So I would just like, well, I want another 15 minutes. I want another 15 minutes. Right. So that was key, like having that accountability. And of course I'll turn it off whenever she wants to, but I think that's been just less beeping and buzzing and people knocking on your door in times when it's probably good just to chill.
Well, and even with the beeping and buzzing, like I don't actually have notifications on for any apps except for Messenger. And, you know, in my business, we do like Messenger ads for people. And that's how I do a lot of like sales conversations is through networking through Messenger. That's like the only thing that I have notifications on for. But like if someone DMs me on Instagram or I don't even have Slack notifications on my phone. And that was really hard. Like turning off email and Slack notifications, that was super hard because I wanted to be available to my team and to my clients. But what I realized is that whenever I was so available, they weren't actually solving problems for themselves. They were just asking me for help all the time. We actually used to use Voxer. And we actually one day, everybody wore black to our team meeting and we had a funeral for Voxer. Like we had to just get rid of Vox. Like we literally made it a joke, but we're like, this is a problem because we're constantly on it all day.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, so that's whenever we shifted over to Slack and I check Slack 3 times a day. So they know that if they ask me like at 10 in the morning, I'm not going to be getting back to them until about noon. And half the time they ask a question, by the time I get in there, they're like, oh, never mind. I figured it out. So that's another hack that I learned too, is like not being 100% always available. I don't know how many people listening have teams or have people that are, I mean, even if it's your friends and family in your life, like maybe obviously if you have a baby, you want to be available to your daycare or your significant other. But if you're like, you know, if you have a team or you have clients, like it's not life and death most of the time. You know, like we run ads for people. The only thing that would happen is if like I accidentally set it for $10,000 a day instead of $10 a day, like that would be an urgent fire I should probably solve, you know, but that doesn't have, you know, it's not really an urgent thing. Like it can wait a few hours and for us to respond. And so that's been a huge like boundaries kind of game changer too, is just not allowing myself to be consistently available. And then I can have my phone elsewhere when I'm homeschooling my son, because he was just doing this with ADHD. And I'm learning so much more about myself now because I've never been diagnosed with that, but I am like 99.9% sure that I also have ADHD. And like I'm checking all these boxes for him and I'm like, this is totally me. And now I totally get why I've missed flights before and have this time blindness, they call it, and lack of focus and then hyper focus. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is totally me. And so having this always being able to be a distraction has made it hard for us to like even just get through a 20-minute math lesson. It should only take 20 minutes, but it becomes an hour because I'm like, oh, 1 second, you know? And so having like boundaries with myself has helped a lot.
That's good. Side note, have you read the book Driven?
I don't think so.
Okay. It was a recommendation from Russell Brunson.
Okay.
And it's like the subtitle is something like the shared DNA characteristics of like Navy SEALs, high performance athletes, entrepreneurs, and maybe you or something like that. Right.
Okay.
And it's all about the genetic differences.
Coach Navy SEALs.
To be honest with you, I read like 3/4 of the book, not the whole book, but the 3/4 I read was like, oh my goodness, this is me. And it's like, there's a big, like very, very similar thing to what could be called ADHD or ADD. And this like genetic difference that entrepreneurs typically have. And it's really, really interesting.
Okay.
So I would just throw that on your list, audible it.
Yeah.
And anyone listening who feels kind of like that sometimes, like, I mean, what are some of the things you're discovering in your son that you're like, oh my gosh, that's totally me in my business? Like, just say a couple of things because it might be helpful for people to hear.
Yeah. Everybody thinks ADHD is like, oh, you're just hyperactive all the time. Well, the reason it was never diagnosed in me is I don't have that. Like I was a straight A student. Like when you're successful, people don't think that you're like, oh, she's fine. And I'm realizing that I've just been resilient and I've learned how to work with it. But a big part of it is a lack of executive function, which is the frontal lobe. It's like underdeveloped, which is like your decision making. And it also has to do with emotional regulation. You know, how like as a woman, you have the hormonal thing. Women have hormonal problems too, but women have this like high, low emotional like thing. There's that. And then take that. And then if you have the ADHD brain, you also have like where you can't control your emotions. And sometimes like I find myself like out of control. And as someone who really cares a lot about personal development, and I've worked with coaches for years, and I've like really tried to like work on it, I have good control over it. But it's also like, I sometimes like lose it, just like everybody, you know? And I didn't even know that had to do with ADHD until I'm reading this book right now called Scattered, and it's by Gabor Mate. And he talks a lot about how the parents and like living this like crazy stressful lifestyle actually contributes to their kids' ADHD symptoms. ADHD isn't caused by your parenting style, but parenting style and lifestyle can contribute to their symptoms. And I have noticed that when we're rushing, there's another book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, also a life-changing book. The hurrying all the time totally makes us more stressed. And I notice that when we're hurrying, I find myself losing it emotionally. And nobody's ever nice when you're in a hurry. Like that's not common. So those two things I think I've noticed a lot. It's just the needing to have a little slower lifestyle, which is really hard when you live in California and a fast pace and you have multiple businesses, and it gets hard. But
what have you done recently to not feel like you're rushing from one thing to the next? Like, what have you implemented, I know, since like your son's diagnosis and just kind of discovering more things about yourself? What are things that you do to kind of like sweep the calendar or just because I oftentimes feel like I'm rushing from one thing to the next. So I'd love to hear what you are doing.
Well, I'm just like a yes person. So I want to be like, sure, yes, we can do that. Yes, this person had a baby, I should bring them a meal. Yes, I'll sign up for that committee at church or whatever. Like it's being able to say no is so hard whenever, and that's somewhat of a people pleasing thing, but it's like being able to, my husband just said no to the family gift exchange. And I was like, we can say no to that? He was just like, yeah, it's just one more thing to shop for. I'm like, it's one gift. And you don't, anyway, but it's like, I was really impressed. I didn't say no. I still said yes. I'm still in it. But I was like, cause I actually like gift giving. It's not stressful to me, but it is for him. And so I think just being able to say no. So like this past fall, why this fall I think felt like chaotic is he was in the church musical and they practiced twice on Sunday. So 7:30 a.m. Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. Wow. And then as it got closer, it was also Thursday afternoons. Like it was a lot. And he was doing soccer practice twice a week and games on Saturday. So it was just so much. And I'm like, okay, we need to just choose one activity at a time. Yeah. So I do remember my childhood and being like in Girl Scouts, church youth group. I played softball. I'm a dancer and I had dance like 3 or 4 times a week, like all of that all the time. You know, that's like too much. And I remember that being fun, but I also don't have too many memories of just like being at home. Like most of my memories were fun, like family outings and going to each other's games. And my brothers played baseball too. And they were in Boy Scouts and just constantly running. So I think in this next season in spring, like we're not doing soccer. He's only going to do one thing. He loves parkour. Parkour is like his favorite thing. And so we're just doing that.
That's fun.
You can hold me accountable to this. Be like, Tracey, did you sign Eli up for anything else?
If I see any soccer pictures.
No soccer. I know he wants to play, but I'm like, we have to pick one because it's just too much. We need to have more time where we can just be at home and play with Legos and color. You know?
You talked about just a second ago about like hiring coaches, and you've always had a coach, so you've done a lot of mindset work, clearly. But like, what was that first like time like when you decided to hire a mentor or hire a coach? And like, what would you tell somebody who's like deciding like, should I do this in my business, for my business? Like, what was that process like for you? And why do you continue to keep investing in that?
I was 19 actually when I had my first mentor. I sold books door to door in college. I don't know if you ever had anyone come to your door, but if they're selling books, talk to them. They're really nice and they're working really hard. And they're not scammers. I'm waiting for someone to come to my door and sell me some books.
I haven't had anybody do that.
I've had like magazines, but like you were selling books.
No, so they're like study guide books. Wow. And this company is based out of Nashville. Okay. And it's like the longest running internship in America. It's called Southwestern Advantage. And it was like in the most intense summer job ever. It was straight commission. And so it was like 80 hours a week. So you're knocking on your first door by 7:59 a.m. and knocking until 9:31 p.m. Like 6 days a week. The 7th day Sunday you're off and there was a rest day and whatever. Well, so I got recruited to do this by this girl, Tara, who she just like believed in me and she trained me. She gave me sales. I mean, I was a sales major, like my degree's in marketing with a professional selling So like I knew I wanted to do sales, and so it made sense for sales internship. But I mean, I had no idea. I mean, they tell you it's gonna be hard. I know how hard it's gonna be. But whenever I was out selling, this was before smartphones, you know, because this was like the iPhone had just come out, but I mean, not everyone had one. And I had a phone, but like it wasn't an addiction like it is now. We had to put our phone in the trunk of our car.
Okay.
And then if you needed something, obviously if it was an emergency, you would call. But like I would call my mentor and she would not answer. Like it would be like a voicemail therapy, you know? And then at the end of the night, we'd do like our evening call. That just knowing that I was going to have someone to talk to at the end of the day just helped me work through my own problems and figure it out. And then I could tell her what I worked through, and then she would give me coaching and stuff.
Wow.
So I was like 19, 20. I did it for 2 summers, and
Wow.
I learned more those 2 summers.
So
Yeah, I know
much.
it's crazy to go back and do a second summer, but I recruited a team actually to go with me the second year, and I learned even more because I was recruiting people and managing emotions. And oh, I mean, we could have a whole podcast episode about that experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think like having a mentor, that was part of the experience, is that you had a mentor. But as soon as I started my own business, I realized that like I can go so much faster if I have somebody who's done it before and they know the problems I'm going to come across. So like Tara, who was my mentor that summer, she was out there selling too. So like we weren't going to talk to each other. And then at the end of the night, I knew that like I was going to be able to have someone to talk to, and she's gonna be like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 3 years. Sure. When this happens, this is what you do. And so it's just so much faster than trying to figure it out yourself. So when I started a business, I didn't know anything about creating an S corp and, what do I do with my domains and like all the like just technical things. I'm like, I could figure that out, but why not just have somebody tell me step-by-step instructions on how to do it?
Yeah. You've mentioned homeschooling a couple of times. You said you went to public school, love public school, but you've decided to do homeschool with your son. As an entrepreneur, like what led to that decision? Well,
being in California is a little different than being in Texas. So like if I was in Texas, I don't know if the decision would be the same. I don't know. I'd have to see, but there's a lot of really, I don't know how political we want to get here, but some of the rules in California are a little more flexible on that. There's no dress code. I see what the girls are wearing to school, and they're wearing like bellies all hanging out. Like it's just, I don't know. I wanted to protect and shelter my son a little bit more until he's old enough to kind of handle that on his own. But another big part of it is he's like really bright and highly intelligent, but with the ADHD, I always knew he had something because of like his just energy, and like I could always tell that he had, and I knew something about myself. So I just felt like I was going to be able to teach him the best. I mean, you're homeschooling your kids right now. Like from the day they're born, you're homeschooling them. Like you're teaching them their colors and their shapes, and you're counting with them, and your kids better than anybody. And so for me, I knew that like when he was about 4, I really started going, wait, so I don't actually have to work 50, 60 hours a week and put my kid in daycare. I was like, wait, I was learning and really striving to get to the point where I'm at now, where I'm working 5 to 7 hours a week, like in my business, and my business is working without me. So now I can spend that time with him. I always thought I was going to have to be paying for private school, or I don't know, like figuring out how to get through public school. So I think focusing on growing the business was it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like I started a business and then magically I am working 5 hours a week. Like, so I don't want anybody to think that, oh, you could just start a business and only work a couple hours. Like you do have to really, like I hustled. I'm not gonna lie. I did. I really worked really hard when he was a newborn. And now if we have another, like it'll be different with a smaller one. But yeah, I really made that decision because I wanted to be able to decide what I was teaching him, go at his own pace, like he's doing some 2nd grade math things. He's really good at math when really he's only 6. He should be doing like kinder or first, but with reading, he's doing kinder first. I'm just taking that a little slower because writing like really stresses him out. And so in school, it's kind of like everyone just has to keep moving forward. We fall behind. And I love that I can customize what he needs.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Yeah, we're not at that stage yet, but we're definitely thinking that way. So it's always fun to hear entrepreneurs' take on it. We talked to Eileen Wilder about it, and she's like, I love homeschooling, but I don't like being the teacher. So like she has a homeschool situation, but she has someone else help teach and uses resources. And there's so many different ways to do it. And we're totally with you on that. Like, I think I think, yes, traditional school is sometimes it's a box. It's like you got to fit in the box. Otherwise it's not going to work, especially, like your son with ADHD. It's like, that can be really hard. And then they're just like, well, let's just medicate this and be quiet and put him in the
Exactly.
box, instead of just like, you can
Especially
be
if
like,
you get in trouble all the time.
hey, go run around outside, and then let's come back to this thing. Like, I think that's so powerful. So way to go, like making that call and also setting your business up in advance for that season. Like, I think that is truly, I mean, what we try to do in Rainmaker is just help people look at, like, what does your time freedom look like, so you can make decisions like this, because there are seasons of life where you may want to hustle, and there's seasons of life where you may be like, I need a system so I can still, produce, but also I have the freedom to do what's in my heart. So way to go doing that. Like, that is so awesome.
Well, I read a statistic in that book I'm reading, Scattered, and he said that you guys should guess, how many average minutes do you think people actually spend with their kids, eyeball to eyeball, just giving them full attention a day on average?
Like a percentage a day?
On average?
How many minutes?
Oh, gosh.
How many minutes? An hour?
Yeah, I bet it's
way
less.
smaller than you think.
I bet it's like 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Oh,
wow.
5 minutes of eyeball to eyeball. Let me give you my attention. They did this huge study.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, like a lot of, and his point was that a lot of behavior issues can be solved if we just give our kids eyeball to eyeball time, where we're like, hey buddy, what do you want to do? Do you want to shoot some Nerf guns? Do you want to build Legos? Like, what are you building? Like, and giving them our full attention. And I feel like when we talked about the phone being a distraction, or when we're running around like a crazy person trying to get to this activity and all the things, then we're just, it's stressful. And then their behavior kind of reflects that. So my biggest focus right now for 2023 is, what can I do to be super intentional? I might recycle that word of the year, which was that from like 2019. I might like recycle that word, use it again, but like be super intentional. Like right now, I'm like 100% intentional with you. I'm not checking my email. I'm not on my phone. Like we can do that for business, but when it comes to our kids, we just think, oh, it's no big deal. Like just checking a text, or whatever. And that's
so
hard to do.
Yeah, we see that even with Kai, just like we call it filling his cup. Like if his cup isn't full, like we haven't spent that like daddy time or mommy time, or like you totally know. And you want to blame the kid for behavior, but it's like typically it's reflecting back on us. Right. And it's just that, like, did we have that intentional time? And as Ollie gets older, I mean, he still gets intentional time right now, but it's like, how do you balance that? And like, so we did recently, like I did a date with Kai, just me and him. You're going to take him, just you and him, to get some presents for Ollie. So like we try to really work that in, because we definitely see that too. It's like he has certain things he really needs to fill his cup so that he's himself,
I love that. You guys are such intentional parents. But if you think about it, we live in a 2-income world, like especially in California, right? So both parents are having to work, and it's like the morning is crazy. I mean, around here, if you're in public school, you have to be at school at 7:45. Like, that's crazy. First of all, I'm like, people get their kids to school by 7:45. That's early for me. Anyway, it's like that. And then you go to work, and then you get off work, and then kids have an hour, sometimes 2 hours of homework. That's not considered intentional fun time with them. You might be sitting with them, but it's kind of a fight. And then it's like dinner and get ready for bed and do the sports activities. It's not like, so if you think about it, there's not a lot of time for it. You have to really make it. So that's a big reason why, like, the mission behind our other business is just like people spending intentional time together with like a family game night. So then
talk about that business, because you guys started that in the middle of the pandemic, right? And like, tell us about that business. What is it? Because I think a lot of our people will resonate with it. And what led you to take that step of faith and go, hey, I think we should launch this thing?
Well, we hosted a game night at a local pizza shop for 6 years. So it was just free. People would come and play games at this local pizza shop. And then of course, COVID forced that to end. And so that was, 2020. And so October 2020, we opened up our brick and mortar local business. It's called Board Game Paradise. And so it's in Redlands, California. So we opened that. So October 2022 was our 2-year mark. And we did like 1.4 million in 2022 in sales, which is pretty crazy. Like we never ever thought we'd do over $1 million in board games. Like that's a lot of cardboard.
That's a lot of cardboard. And there was definitely like a marketplace that kind of emerged in 2020.
Yeah.
Did you
We
guys
saw
see
a
that
ton of that.
opportunity and you're like, hey, let's jump on this? Or was it something you've
I
been
think
thinking
it was
about for a long time?
Richard definitely like had a big dream to open up a board game cafe, like where
Okay.
you come in, you can buy games, but you can also just check them out and have food and like play. But with
Yeah.
COVID, it was like not a thing to really, it was a dumb idea to open a restaurant, you know? And so we just opened it up as a retail store and we have a whole play space. So we have events 7 days a week.
Wow.
People can come and play. But our mission statement has always been disconnect from the screens and reconnect with one another. And so that's like huge on our wall. And I think that that's what's, you know, contributed to our success. I think Richard will love to say like, God has totally blessed our business despite us. Like we knew nothing about running a retail store. We have 11 employees and several of them are like full time. Like it's crazy. And we never thought that it would grow to that point. Like even just the location, like it's like across the street from that pizza place. You know, it's like in a downtown area where people go out to eat and they're just walking and they're looking for something else to do. And they're like, oh, board game store. Like it's a perfect location. So it was really cool to be able to open up a store in the middle of pandemic and people were already at home. So they were looking for things to do at home. One of our customers was like, I literally finished Netflix. Like they were like, I finished Netflix.
Like,
I'm like, I didn't know that was possible. But like people just had so much TV time that they were looking at. And so we're still growing though. So like, even though people are back out and about, you know, they're still wanting to play board games. And so this past November, we launched a subscription, like a game night delivered just subscription. So that's been really fun. So that's called Kogo Crate. And Kogo is like the Latin word. It means to bring together. So we made it stand for connect over games often. So that's another thing that's been something that we've implemented in our family is intentional family game night. And we do that once a week where it's like no phones allowed, like no screens allowed. Because, you know, it's not your turn and you're like kind of bored. And so you grab your phone and you're like, so we challenge people. We have a Facebook group where we challenge people to do their family game night and then post their photos and then put their phone away. And, you know, it's been really fun to like grow that group and seeing people just be inspired to like get back to family game night.
That's so cool.
That's so awesome. I love it. I love it. How do you like, I think you use the word multi-passionate. I've been hearing this word more in our world. Cause like, these aren't your first businesses either, right? Like you have an agency, like, and then now you're doing this. Like, what would you say to someone? Cause I think because we totally were in this season for a long time and we still are I'm always curious and dabbling in other things. Right. But there's an element of like focus on one thing, but then there's also an element of, okay, well, maybe have your hands in multiple things. How did you really narrow down and decide what you're going to lean into in your business? I think the marketing thing was kind of the first thing. Well, I guess you did the door knocking, the books.
The door knocking. I sold Mary Kay for a while.
Okay.
That, I don't recommend the whole MLM thing. Sorry if people are listening here. I do love that. But like the only way I figured out how to make money was to recruit people. And I didn't really want to do that. I'm not that much into makeup. So I was like, okay, but that gave me a taste of like, okay, I can do my own thing and make money when I sell stuff. So I did that. I worked for Sam Adams for a while. It wasn't a business, but I learned very quickly that I was not a good employee. I was like the number one sales rep on the whole West Coast out of like 20 something reps. And I got fired because I did not follow protocol. And I'm like, okay, I'm like an entrepreneur. Like I can't, I had this argument when they were firing me. I was like, I don't understand. Like I'm literally beating everyone. I'm winning all these contests. I'm getting more Sam Adams on tap at all these restaurants. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but we really need you to follow this system, this step by step. Like you have to walk in and count how many Sam Adams signs there are. And then I'm like, but it's so much faster. Anyway, so I learned that like I had to do my own thing and I've made mistakes because I do my own thing and I don't follow the rules sometimes. But like I've learned from those mistakes, you know, you have to get one of them successful first. Like we didn't launch Kogo Crate right away, even though I had that idea like a year and a half ago. I didn't launch it because we were still figuring out Board Game Paradise. Like, so this is like a separate, it's still part of the company, but it's like a little separate little side. I mean, e-commerce is totally different than selling at a local brick and mortar. You know, now we're learning e-commerce, which we didn't know how to do. So like a marketing agency, e-commerce, brick and mortar, those three are totally different businesses. Cause we're like you, it's like, you're always wanting to dabble and try different things. And see people designing t-shirts and selling those on Amazon. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. I want to do like the quick on demand thing. And, but I think I think it's Russell that probably Russell, he says smart stuff all the time that says like, you got to get one business to $1 million. And once that one's there, then you can change to a different business. Unless you give up on the first one and switch, like you can obviously quit a business, but like, it's hard to keep doing two. For me, as like the marketing agency always started out kind of small, like as freelancing. And then I just slowly grew that and really narrowed down like our niche. I always think that I should be farther than I am. And then I have to remind myself, I'm only in my 30s. And a lot of the people I'm comparing myself to are in their 40s and 50s. Yeah. Like, why am I doing that? Yeah. You know, I should be excited.
Yeah. We do the same thing. We're always like, it's like that driven, like
the driven book. It's you know, it's
like, okay, we climbed the mountain. Now I'm ready for the next mountain.
You're like, where's the next mountain at the top of the mountain?
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I mean, running a business, you and your husband run the business together, or it's like, hey, you run this, I run this. How do you guys separate the roles?
Yeah. Well, I was helping him with marketing and doing that. Cause like, I kept trying to recruit him to help me in the marketing agency when he was working at a job. And I was trying to like get him to like own one of the divisions. And like, we're both, I don't know if you know the Enneagram, but we're both like 3s and 8s. Like we're both high achieving challenger types. And so we kind of butt heads, like if we're both trying to be in charge. So like I run the marketing agency. He doesn't help me too much with that, but I mean, I bounce ideas off of him. And then for the board game store, like sometimes I'll help him with like, I run his ads and things like that. But like I trained his team on the social media. So like they do the social media marketing now. I don't even touch it. So they're like running it on their own. I had created like a content calendar when we started, but he pretty much runs that business completely without me. So the Kogo Crate thing was like, that was like kind of more my baby. Cause I was like, okay, a subscription business, like that's a great idea. Cause then people can, you know, they can get it the same experience that they have at our store where we curate the games. All of our reviews are all about how they love the experience of getting good games suggested. Cause it's hard to know if you go on Amazon or on Target, you stand there, you're like, I don't know what game to get. So if you have a human that's like, oh, you have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, this game would be great. So we tried to recreate that experience. Cool. So it's been fun for me developing the website and doing the marketing and running the Facebook group. And so that's kind of our thing we're kind of doing together.
I was just saying, like, you know, entrepreneurship is that spiritual journey, but it's also like, it's so good for your life and your marriage and like learning to communicate. And that we've definitely seen that as well. It's like really grown us as people, individuals, leaders, and parents even. Like, it's like running a business is so much like babysitting, you know, it's like growing a baby is what I'm trying to say. And sometimes your business baby needs you in the middle of the night. And sometimes, you know, like you just learn.
Yeah. And our families don't get it, you know, like it's nice to have this community. I love what you guys have developed just in your Facebook group and all of your communities, because our families think we're weird. Like, I'm like, I literally visit you for 2 weeks. I go to Texas to visit them for 2 weeks. And then they're mad that I got to take a call on like a Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm like, most people can't just come for 2 weeks. You know, they would come for a long weekend. So like, I've had to be like, hey, look, I could have just taken off 3 days, come in for a weekend, and then had to go back to work. But I came here for 2 weeks. And then, yes, I have to work a little bit while I'm here. Don't be mad at me, you know? So it's just, it's been a balance of like, and even like my mother-in-law the other day, she's like, I'm just really worried about Richard because he's like not in the store very often. Like he's always like going to board game conventions and like hanging out at home. And I'm like, when is he working? And I'm like, he doesn't get paid by the hour. So it's just the thing they don't get. So I think like the other biggest thing I would say is make sure that you, besides having a mentor and a coach, be in a community of people that are trying to do the same thing as you, or you can bounce ideas off of. That's been huge for me, is just being able to connect with other people doing similar things. And you don't feel so alone. Yeah. Like I don't ever really feel alone in my business. I think some entrepreneurs feel really lonely. I don't feel that way because I've been in community with people.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, but there are communities. There are amazing communities that support you so you don't have to feel that way. So I love that you touched upon it. So cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tracey. This has been such a sweet conversation. I feel like we went a lot of really fun places. So thank you for going there with us. And if people want to like to resonate with what you're saying, they want to connect with you, check out what you're up to and any of these things.
Especially the board game.
Yeah, I know. Like, can we just list off a few ways for people to find you on the internet?
Well, the Facebook group is called Families for Game Night. So if you have a Families for Game Night, that'd be a great way to like hang out and connect with us in our Facebook group. But I'm mostly active on Instagram. So it's just my name, Tracey Matney, VPS.
Okay.
So I post marketing tips over there. Yeah. So it's hard when you have a bunch of business. I manage like 4 Instagram accounts. So that's like,
well, if you go to the main one, they can probably find all the other things.
They can find the other ones. Yeah. So Tracey with an EY.
Awesome. And what is the website for the game night subscription?
It's kogocrate.com. COGO crate.com.
Well, thanks so much, Tracey. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. We love having guests like Tracey on. So stay tuned for the next episode. Another awesome one coming your way.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeitrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeitrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.